Well, hello, Leah Piper, and welcome to the High Vibration Living Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. What a delight.
Well, I wanted to start with a quote that you have in your emails that I just thought was so beautiful. And it's, we waste time looking for the perfect lover instead of creating the perfect love, which is a quote by Tom Robbins. And I just thought that was so beautiful because I think in this day and age, it's a lot easier for people to run, to exit a relationship when they don't feel like it's working for them, or they're at a point where they have to open up a little bit more or emotionally go deeper. And I love that, you could really spend your whole life running instead of just going deeper with the people that you're with.
Yeah. Instead of really doing the work. I think a lot of people keep attracting the same kind of person. And it's always the fault out there, instead of realizing that they're the only constant. And so if you want to change what's happening out there, you first have to change what's in here. And when you start to take a look at up-leveling, if you want to up-level your job, if you want to up-level your relationship, if you want to up-level your health, if you want to up-level your connection to spirit and have more experiences that are filled with awe and wonder, you got to do the work in here. You got to up-level yourself. And when we talk about partnership, if you want a great partner, you also have to be a great partner. It's not the other person's job to do all of the work. It always starts from this side of the door. And I'm pointing to myself for those of you who aren't watching. I'm pointing to my heart, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. For the audience, can you tell them a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So I'm a relationship, sex, and intimacy expert, especially sacred sexuality, having to do with the ancient sacred sexual arts. I really look at sex as an art form, and I look at partnership and love as an art form. And I think when we can elevate that, our life becomes richer and we start taking it, I want to say seriously, although I don't know that I like that word. It's more like we cultivate it. We look at it as something that we want to cultivate as an ongoing thing in life that causes our life satisfaction to go up. And when I think about that as an art form, and we're not born great lovers, we're kind of great disasters, frankly. I mean, when you think about who our first gurus of love and sex are, it's our parents, and that's enough to screw anybody up. Furthermore, our education has a lot to be desired. Yeah. And when most of us are getting our sex education through porn or through misinformation because maybe our culture is filled with shame or our parents are still filled with sexual repression, then we're not really pursuing a sense of liberation on the deepest level possible when it comes to the most important thing we do as human beings, which is learning how to love. Yeah. And I've really directed my focus in the world of sexual love because sexual love is so unique. It's unlike all these other experiences of love that we have. And so I find that really infinitely fascinating, and it's really filled with lots of obstacles, and it really triggers our subconscious and all of our conditioning about what we think about men and women and sex in the bedroom and shame, guilt, and fear and the whole caboodle.
But it's the best playtime you could possibly have in your life. And I think the magic is the energy transfer, right? And so as you work on yourself and as you develop a spiritual practice, as you work on your physical health, your emotional health, your mental health, I describe this to people, colors open up, experiences open up. You can improve each other's physical health, let alone spiritual health. You can create things. You can use it as a manifestation tool. I mean, you cannot just have great sex and have great pleasure, but you can create. And you can have multidimensional experiences that don't require drugs. It's like, why aren't more people curious about diving into this? Because this is the jackpot to find someone who you enjoy talking with and hanging out with and who you're attracted to find a partner and then to explore and create and play in a multidimensional way. It's like, why isn't everybody into this?
Preach, sister. You are speaking my language. I mean, really, what people don't know is that when we cultivate our sexual energy, it positively affects every other sector in our life.
Yes.
And including learning how to have transcendent experiences through our bodies. It brings us into our body, and we are in these human bodies. Let's live in them. Let's occupy them. So much of the day we are in our heads.
Yes.
And yet we are built with this playground, this pleasure playground called our bodies. And especially in the realm of arousal and sexual bliss and orgasmic states of consciousness, we can really use that as fuel to propel us into success in many areas of our life. You want to be a great parent? Cultivate your sexual energy so that you are present for your kids, so that you are really leveraging the quality time that you have with them. When you are cultivating your sexual energy, you're cultivating your awareness. When you're cultivating your sexual energy, you're actually giving your body more energy to do all the things you love in your life, like your hobbies. You become more romantic. You become better focused. You're able to manifest, like you said, whether that is of a secular nature or your own sainthood. You want more patience? Cultivate your sexual energy. You want to be better on time? Cultivate your sexual energy. You want better sleep at night? Cultivate your sexual energy. Our sexual energy, when you have more of it, it doesn't make you this creepy, sexual, out of control person. It actually, through the cultivation and through the discipline of doing practices, because these things require focus, they require a meditative mindset, they require breath control. And all of these things that are quite simple to learn will elevate not only your experience in the bedroom, but like I said, that carries over into who you are in the world. And when you're giving yourself that kind of permission, even just through your mirror neurons, you're giving other people that kind of permission too, that they can live a turned on life. And who that's going to affect the most is going to be your partner. But it's also going to be your best friends. And hopefully it's going to help you raise healthy, happy, sexual humans if you have children. And so I think what gets people a little scared is they think if they think about sex or practice more of this conscious sexuality, that their sexual energy is going to be out of control. And somehow that's going to be creepy or leaky or messy. And that's just not what happens.
Oh, it makes you more creative, and it makes you have intent with everything you do. And if you dip your toe anywhere in spirituality, you start to understand that intention is everything. So before I make a meal, I set my intention. Before I walk out of the house for the day, I look at my calendar. I know my intentions. If I want to have a great conversation with the person when I'm recording this podcast, I set an intention before you and I connect of the experience I want us to have. If you're planning a date night, think about the intention, the experience that you want to be able to share with the person, the outcome that you're hoping to have. Intention is everything. And so a lot of what you mentioned all comes from intent, and it then moves into every part of our life, just creating a better experience.
Yeah, I love that you said the sexual energy is creative energy, because that's exactly what it is. When we think about that which creates life, when we think about creative energy or life force energy, it's not just a masterpiece on the wall that we think of creative energy that someone painted. It's really that creative force. We, as these human beings, we can make eyeballs and elbows and these little creatures, these sentient beings. It's remarkable.
Yeah.
So when we think about what we want to create in our life that is of a positive nature, we can use our sexual energy by tapping into the life force that dwells within it. And instead of squandering it, we play with it. And we can look at not that spending it without intention, right? Like it comes back to your intention. When we have intentionality with it, then we can drive that creative energy very specifically. And then that, instead of creating a generation with our sexual energy, because let's face it, most of us are not creating another generation with our sexual energy. We're one of the only species that doesn't have sex only for procreation.
Yes.
We have sex for pleasure. We have sex for stress relief. We have stress for all sorts of reasons, for all sorts of reasons. And so therefore, if you can learn how to harness it, play with it, spin it up, then you can create regeneration instead of a generation. If you know where to target the energy, you can circulate it through your system. and for your health. Specifically, there are Taoist practices that uses sexual energy and then takes it and moves it, directs it with the power of your mind and the power of your touch to heal your organs, to heal your skin, to make your hormones healthier. Goes to all of your glands. It can help heal you from disease. It can bring you more brain health. So your brain's the biggest sex organ. We can do things to increase our vitality through sexual practices. And also, by using your sexual energy, you can aim it to be more resilient in your life. And we could all use more resilience, because every single one of us is going to go through crisis after crisis as a human being.
Yeah.
How we manage those crises is dependent on our resilience. And our resilience is dependent on how we treat our bodies, what we put in our bodies, what kind of energy we allow into our space. Making sure that our systems know how to block toxic energy that comes in the way of emotions, people, experiences, partners. And so by combining sort of these sexual art practices, we can use that just as well as we can use food that we put in our body as medicine. Sex is medicine. Food is medicine. Energy is medicine.
I think it goes together.
Yeah.
If you think
they're not separate.
No, because everything that's going in your partner is creating energy, which is going to go into you. And you're doing the same thing. Everything that you put into you is going to get transferred to them. So I think that's why you see so many partners who look the same, and not necessarily their physical looks, but their health and wellness is usually, if they're connected, on par. So if you see partners who are very connected, their physical health matches. I think when you see partners who are emotionally and physically disconnected, you see that their bodies and their physical health is disconnected.
Yeah, when they're out of alignment, you can see how they're out of alignment. They're either codependent, where that out of alignment is, and you can see that operating in their body, or you can see one person doing one thing and the other person falling behind. And then that causes friction and frustration. Where when we're really being considerate of our shared values, that inner radiance really tends to have a greater harmony between couples. But I'm around couples all the time, and I see people at our seminars. Some of them have been together for 6 months. Some of them have been together for 32 years. And a lot of relationships that are in trouble sexually, and this is one dynamic. There's 1,000 dynamics, but one of the dynamics is, and it's typically a woman feels shut down, doesn't want to have sex. And in a hetero relationship, the man wants more sex and is frustrated that they keeps on feeling rejected sexually. And one of the dynamics that people aren't aware of, and I'm not sharing this to blame men. I think men are completely innocent with this concept. But oftentimes when it comes to the point of penetration, one partner who's penetrating can be very unconscious with their energy. And when you think about specifically when a man has an ejaculation, for many men, and it's an amazing thing, ejaculating can be a stress reliever. It's a reset. It's let me move this energy. Let me get a state change. An orgasm is actually a state change of consciousness. So is eating food, state change of consciousness. So is smoking pot, drinking alcohol. We're always reaching for state changes to break up our day. And orgasm is one of those. So for a lot of men, there's a habit, well, if I ejaculate at the end of the day, I'll feel better. I'll get a good night's sleep. And there's a phenomenon that I've been watching for years of watching a partner who has sex, deposits his stress and tension into his partner, not realizing it, of course. And then over the years, she's getting more and more shut down to sex. I'm not really interested in being penetrated. I'm not really getting off on this situation. And then all the attention goes to her going, well, you're shut down. There must be something wrong with your libido. There must be something wrong with your sex. You should get some therapy. You are having a problem with your sexuality. When the truth is, and I want to encourage people to find a little fix. If you and your partner are having a hard time finding that close intimacy again, finding that sense of openness and connection where your body craves opening to each other, craves taking each other on a ride. That's really the sex is the most fun when we are actively participating in shifting our partner's system so they can experience closeness and connection and bliss and a feeling of homecoming. And so one of the things that I love to teach men is I want you to experiment with right before you penetrate your partner with anything. I want you to come up with a thought form.
Yes.
Something that you want to penetrate your partner with. May she feel loved. May they feel beautiful. May they feel desired. May they feel safe. May they feel like they belong. May they know that they're home right here in my arms. Like, just come up with something lovely.
Yeah.
To put into this thing you are going to penetrate them with, so that they can be filled with that. And just by doing that, you will shift the tension or the stress that might be deposited through the unconscious in that lovemaking experience. So I think there's lots of little things. Again, that comes back to your theme of intention.
Yeah.
It's bringing intention to each other's systems. And for partners, this is for men or women included, how you touch your partner also makes a difference. Are you conscious with your touch? Do you do a kind of a hug where your hips are thrown back and you're in A-frame and you're barely bringing your chest heart to heart and you're kind of patting them on the back? Try a different type of embrace. Bring them in, take a deep breath in their ear, fill them up with your skin and your body and your hands. Touch them with consciousness. Be aware of what you're touching, how you're touching. And if you want to shift your touch into a sensual touch, into something that feels more evocative of turn on, then I encourage you to elongate your caress. Stretch that caress down their body very slowly. Sensual touch is different than therapeutic touch in the way that it is a long, conforming caress that is really slow. And in that slowness, you're able to build sexual tension and sexual anticipation. And sometimes the anticipation is better than the thing. So really capitalize on that.
Yeah, it's flirting. When we do that, should we be imagining colors? Is there something, should we be moving energy? And where should we be moving that color or energy to?
So I think of the 7 different energy centers in the body. Mm-hmm. Eastern practices would refer to them as chakras. I like to call them genius zones because sometimes people hear the word chakra and they start to, they turn away because it's too woo-woo. But the truth of the matter is that we've got these reservoirs of energy that are like extensions of the brain that come along the spine. They also are in relationship to different glands in the system. And so when you touch someone, like for instance, the heart is a chakra. So when you consciously touch someone's heart, and if you give like a conscious peck or breast massage, then you take that energy that's in their heart, and then you use that caress to come up to their neck, to come down their shoulders. You can even take that heart energy to another chakra, such as the power chakra, which is the area of the navel or the solar plexus. So then you paint that love to their power center so that when they're powerful because it's connected to love. And then if you take that caress further and bring it to the genitals and you just hold the genitals is another chakra. And that's where passion lives. And now maybe after caressing down to the genitals, you caress from the genitals back up to the power, back up to the heart. And now you're taking the energy of passion and you're bringing that to their power system. And then you're uniting passion and power up to the heart. And then maybe you just start to caress the back of their neck. And now they're helping them be connected to their expression with the energy of their passion and their power and their love. So what's really fun, I think, about the chakra map, especially in sexuality, is that there are erogenous zones front and back. They're reservoirs of energy, so you can evoke more pleasure. When you study the psychology of them, you'll start to understand where they store their wounds. The story of woe gets trapped in the soma in the body. So then you start to learn the practices of actually being a sexual healer, because you can help your partner unpack the aches in their heart from that divorce they had 5 years ago. You can help them relieve the suppression of their sexual energy because of shame and guilt that is found in the tissues of their genitals. And you can be there by just your presence and by allowing those tears to come up to the surface. When you're pouring so much love into someone's system in a sexual framework, whatever isn't love can come to the surface and make its way out of the body, therefore creating more space in the system to be filled with love. So these are some of the things that I geek out on that I'd love to teach people how to cultivate.
Geek out on because this is what I want to learn to do. And so as you were talking about touching and moving energy, what I do and imagine is if my hand's on a man's chest, then what I'm seeing is the green, the heart chakra. I'm imagining that emerald green, and I'm imagining expanding it, just expanding it, and then moving it back to front. So making sure that they feel it, not just in the front of the chest, but in their back. And then moving to their solar plexus, imagining that bright yellow light. I always imagine a Care Bear.
Yes.
I always think it's really funny, especially for kids who grew up in my generation. It's like,
Care Bear stare.
The Care Bears and a lot of these cartoons at the time showed you how to use your inner power and your chakras.
So true.
We didn't realize it, but go and watch the Care Bears. It is all chakras. And then you keep moving down and you have orange, and then you have red, and then like a rainbow, you can move all that energy up, and then you can open up the throat chakra so someone can better communicate their feelings, because ultimately we have to use our mouth, because that's our voice is more powerful for intentions.
Yes. I'm so glad you mentioned front and back, because your chakras go front and back. Colors, absolutely. For the advanced tantrika or yogi, you can use the sacred geometry of each of the chakras, where you actually imagine, so for instance, the sacred geometry for the second chakra or the genitals is a crescent moon, a smiling crescent moon. So imagine that you've got a crescent moon in your hand as you are arousing the genitals, and you put that thought form of the crescent moon. You could then enliven it with the color of orange and bring more energy and more awakening, because and then you can also chant. Each of the chakras also have a mantra, and you can create vibration through sound. So if I wanted to use the mantra for, let's say, the genitals, vam, and I'm at the back of their tailbone, I can chant vam, 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 right to the back of their spine, sending the vibration of the mantra, or sending the thought form of the sacred geometry, or sending the color right through the chakra with the message, awaken. Because what we want to do with these chakras, both from a Western philosophy and an Eastern philosophy, is we want to use those practices to awaken the chakras, get them lined up. And by doing so, we are increasing in a safe way someone's ability to run current. And when we can safely run more current, two very powerful things happen. One, we're able to feel greater amounts of pleasure. We can run orgastic, blissful energy through our system more efficaciously. Secondly, we're able to process negative emotions faster. We don't stay shut down as long. And so one of the things I always teach couples is a practice called, it's a challenge, it's a commitment, which is, how fast can I come back to love when I find myself separate? Which is really important, because we get stuck in our shit. And then we just sit there and we stew, and it's everyone's problem, and we feel so injured and trespassed, and the story and the story and the story. But when you have a commitment, I am committed to coming back to love as quickly as possible, not to being right or proving that I'm right. And that doesn't mean you need to still have boundaries and have good communication, but then you have a commitment to really being a more conscious partner, and a commitment to resolving the issues that are at hand. And so the Gottmans would call this turning towards. The most successful relationships are relationships where both partners continue to turn towards each other versus away from each other and disconnect.
This is so much fun. Like, I love this so much. I love learning about this so much, because it's combines everything that I love, right? Because it's energy and spiritual based, but it's also real life because it's your physical body. I don't know how every adult isn't like eating this shit up all the time. Like, I wish I had a boyfriend to take a class with about this right now, because all it does is it not just enhances your relationship, it enhances every area of your life. Because when you think about when you're in love, when you're in bliss and you're having great sex, everything else in your life goes great. And nothing really gets you down, and you have an inner glow that you can't create in any other way. So I just love this work that you do, and I love learning about this. It just lights me up. What I'd like to know is, you talked about the intention that a man can have at penetration. What's the intention that a woman can hold before that moment?
So it's really how we penetrate their heart. So from the masculine energetic to the feminine energetic. And it's common for us to use terms like masculine and feminine, but we can also use the opposite ends of the battery. So we have a negative charge and a positive charge. And so with a battery, the positive charge, the current goes out. Mm-hmm. But in order for the charge to work, there has to be the minus side of the battery is the receiving station. It's the magnetic charge. So plus sign goes out, minus side catches. Mm-hmm. Depending on the genitals that you're born with, the energetic poles get set up in a certain way.
Yeah.
So the positive pole in a man's body, which means the active charge or the masculine charge, is the penis, the physical manifestation of the penis. It penetrates, it sends, its energy goes outward, right? It gets an erection. Now, the woman vulva also gets erections. Ours is just dispersed differently. But a woman's genitals is the receiving station. It's the minus side of the battery, or the feminine. It takes in. It's magnetic. And isn't it interesting? Everybody wants in.
Yeah.
Because it's so magnetic. Now, when we look at the heart, the plus sign in a woman's body is the manifestation of the breasts. We are ascending station. We penetrate. We go out in the world through the heart. And a man's negative battery, or the feminine pole in his system, is the heart. Notice it doesn't protrude. But isn't it magnetic? Isn't it attractive? Don't we want in?
Yes.
And so we have locks. We've got keys for each other's locks and locks for each other's keys. Yeah. And when we're in harmony, when my partner allows his heart to be a soft resting place for mine, I feel home. When my pelvis is open for my partner as a soft place to rest, he's home. But we often do war these poles with each other. And we have that. It's quite obvious when we take a look at rape or assault. We can see where someone takes power from the feminine, right? It's in that feminine pole. It's the minus side of the battery. It's the vulnerable part of the battery because it's the receiving station. So there's a lot of unconsciousness there. And we're very well versed as to the impact of that. What we're not as well versed in understanding is how we can take from a man's heart unconsciously, with our entitlement, with our expectation, by treating them like they're an idiot, through emasculation. Well, you should have done it my way. What are you, stupid? And we don't always say that with words. We give it with a look. We can be very dismissive. We don't actually realize just how devastating our energy can be, the impact of our unconsciousness to the feminine pole in a man's system. So when we're in right relationship, I'm protecting my partner's heart. They're protecting my pelvis out in the world. And so we can kind of bubble that energetically. When I'm walking down the street with my husband, I don't have to be completely like, okay, where are all the threats? He's watching over that. I just get to be la-di-da. I'm just walking down the street. I'm not worried about the threats. It's an amazing thing to feel that in partnership. But my job is to protect his heart. So I'm really aware of the emotional energy in any environment, especially around his mother. And so for a lot of men, they've had women cross their boundaries emotionally, usually starting with mom. It could be the overbearing mother, the cold mother, the mother smother, not respecting boundaries. Or sort of the emotional incest. When mom doesn't have her own partner, oftentimes there can be leaning into intimacy. All of her intimacy needs are coming from her child. And so these are things that we don't always know to look for, but we can learn how to be a safe feminine by really noticing how conscious our touch can be when it comes to a man's heart. So just like we'd want a man to come up with a thought form when he penetrates us, we want to come up with a protective, respectful energy that knows when to hang out at the edge, therefore doesn't barge into their heart space because we think we're entitled because they love us. Just like I don't want my husband to think he's entitled to have sex with me whenever he wants. It's not free consent. I still have to be in agreement. No woman likes it when someone, there are instances where it can be a little kinky to have some experiences, but by and large, our consent matters. And so does their consent when it comes to penetrating their heart and being really sensitive to that. And where we become the least sensitive is when we are upset, is when we have this deep desire to be understood. And don't you get it, And so we can go on and on and on, not realizing put that at his edge instead of trying to put it inside of him. Leave it at the edge so that they can unpack it, so they can move towards it, so they're not feeling invaded or disrespected.
I think I would love to know about are actually a few more games that you can play to help people better understand the intertwining that happens with your partner. So after you have sex with somebody, are there games that you can play in bed to help each other understand how easy it is to pass information and thoughts to each other, consciously and unconsciously? Does that make sense?
So I would probably look at it a little bit differently. My framework would be, how do we increase our attunement to each other? So some people are really natural at reading energy and transmitting energy. Most people are not. Energy is like this. It's so, what is it? How do I feel it? I don't know how to see it. It can be so, I don't even know the word. It feels imaginary to a lot of people.
Got it.
So I like to take people and really slow it down. The first thing to understanding energy and to seeing energy is to watch body language. Because you can start to see when someone lights up, their body language changes. When someone feels confident, their body language shifts. What does it look like when someone is radiant? What's their body doing? When someone is shut down, what's collapsing? What's happening with their face and their facial expressions? What's happening with their shoulders? What's happening with their chest? What's happening with how they walk? What about what's happening with their hands? When you can start to watch people's body language, it will teach you so much about what's happening with them emotionally. And when you can track when someone's opening and closing, you'll start to see the energy that surrounds it. So I'm always telling people, watch for opening and closing by watching the body. Notice in a sensual experience how someone will open and arch their body, their spine, their arms, their ribs, their hips, their thighs. Those are all invitations of turn on. That will help you guide your touch. And by watching these things, by starting to notice what's opening and what's closing, starting to see how expressions will give you information about their emotional state, their physical state, then you're going to be able to start reading their energetic state. And that is where the transmission of energy through touch can start to have messages. And this comes back to thought form. I want to massage my partner's heart. Let's say I want to give them a conscious heart massage, right? I want to open up the tension in those pectoral muscles. I want to take my fingertips, and it's almost like I could open up a cage, spread their chest open, peeling the hands across their chest, their nipples, all the way to their armpits. I want to be able to do circular motions for each breast or each pec. I want to be able to put their nipple in the center of my palm, which is the acupuncture point for the heart protector. And through that, so here I am, I'm consciously opening up their heart. I'm wanting to create a safe place for them to unfurl their heart, to become less guarded. So I can say things along with my touch. Mm-hmm. Or I could put the things I want to say in my hands and in my eyes to communicate to them. Your eyes can communicate so much that sometimes your throat can't yet until you unblock it. But if you can allow yourself to trust the images and the words that are arising, they may not make sense to you, but if you have the courage to say them to your partner, they probably make sense to them. So that's a fun investigation.
Yeah.
And then what I always love to do when I'm holding someone's heart is tell them what I see. One of the things that's really amazing to do with men is think about who they are in their world. Who are they as a dad? Who are they as a partner? Who are they as a boss? Who are they as an employee? Who are they as an uncle or a nephew or a son? And because a lot of people take a look at all these relationships in their life, and that sums up who they are in the world. So when you say, I see you, I see what an amazing father you are. I loved the way that you helped him with his homework the other night. Do you know how much it turns me on when I watch you put our kids to bed? Like something in me just opens up, so much tenderness. Or I know you're really struggling with our kid, Jessie. And I just want you to know that I see the struggle that you're having and the confusion that you're having. And I want you to know I see you and I love you and I know how much you care. You know, by being able to say, see you, and this is how I see you. Fuck, have the Kleenex ready. I hope it's okay. I said the F-bomb. You might have to beep that out. And when our partners have those emotions, that's when they're showing their vulnerability. And that is such a huge gift as adults. You know, I love the psycholinguistics of language and of words. And the word vulnerable literally means and translates to woundable. That's why it's so hard to do. When we're vulnerable, we're actually going, oh my God, please, I'm the most woundable right now. Please be gentle. Please hold me. And when we do that, I mean, isn't it such an enormous privilege and a gift when someone trusts you enough that they're vulnerable? There's nothing more beatific. We are our most lovable when we are vulnerable. We think they're going to see all of our ugly parts. Like, I'm going to show you all my guts and you're going to run and you're going to turn away and you're not going to like it. But truly, that's when we are our most real. And we fall in love with what's real. We don't typically fall in love with the inauthentic mask. Like when we try to be what someone else would love, we don't usually get the love. We get love when we really bare our soul and we go soul to soul with people. And so intimacy requires three things. There's three pillars to intimacy, both sexual and non-sexual intimacy. And those things require vulnerability, trust. Now, trust, you know, and if you're going to be vulnerable, you got to put your trust in someone. But here's the most overlooked issue with trust, and that is trusting yourself. You've got to trust yourself that you're going to make mistakes, but that you can learn from them. And so how we recover from a mistake is very important. It's like, I know that I may be vulnerable with the wrong person, but I trust that I will be okay, even if that's true. And that's how you become a masterful person in the art form of love, is you cultivate self-trust. Because cultivating self-trust then leads your ability to trust others, which then leads to vulnerability, which naturally cultivates something called presence. And the word presence, again, another one of those buzzwords we see all over the place. But what the hell is presence? All presence is being in the moment. And when you're really in the moment with someone, you're right there, man. You're there to feel everything that's there to feel. You're there to be there for all the feelings they're having. You know, you're really together in the moment. And those three things create intimacy.
And that's the present. You know, it's not just the physical present, but it's the gift.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the yummiest. And you know what? The truth of the matter is, it takes energy to do those things. Because being present actually requires a lot of focus.
It does.
You can't be distracted. And I don't know what it is about the human brain that it gets so much relief from just being all over the place. It's like being really focused feels like it takes a lot of energy, and it does, which is why we have to restore our resources. We have to be well resourced to be a good partner. And it's also going to just be a part of life that sometimes you are under-resourced. And so you have to have good practices like moving your energy and exercising and caring about what you put in your body and be going slow, slowing shit down when you need to slow things down because everything's been operating too fast. How you are working with your mental health, how you are perspective and your outlook on life, how you make meaning out of things. Is the way that you're making meaning causing you to be a victim, or is it causing you to thrive? And so we have to take a look at our judgment thoughts. We need to talk back to our judgments. Whenever we're being critical of ourselves or of somebody else, we have to create a stronger habit that gets curious and goes, well, gee, that's really interesting. I had that thought about so-and-so. Well, that's very interesting that I look in the mirror and all I can see is my fat belly and I treat myself like shit. Instead of putting my hands on my belly and go, look how powerful you are. Look how magnetic you are. I love this curvy skin. Even if you don't believe it, we have to shift those voices.
People have tuned in and they're loving the conversations that we're having. What books do you recommend that they dive into to kind of keep learning about this?
Great question. So if you liked this section on chakras and you're really curious about the psychology of chakras and how it relates to the Eastern philosophy of chakras, best book is called Eastern Body, Western Mind by Anodea Judith. If you're curious about conscious loving and how to take a look at sex from a sexual art form, how to increase intimacy, and also the things having to do with sexual healing, I recommend the book Tantra, The Art of Conscious Loving by Charles and Caroline Muir. If you want to be more masterful with your touch and understand female arousal, because there's so much that we don't understand or that we haven't understood about female arousal and how female sexuality is different than male sexuality and where they're the same, then there's two books I recommend. One is called The Female Anatomy of Arousal by Sherry Winston, brilliant book. Another one is Come As You Are by Emily Nagasaki, I think is her last name.
These are great resources. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Since you are a podcast host as well, are there other podcasts that you love listening to learn about sex, moving energy, connection, love?
Okay, yeah. So my podcast is called the Sex Reimagined Podcast, and we interview 3 episodes a month. We interview other sexperts, researchers, publishers, authors, gurus, even just regular people who are having like awakening experiences. And then one of the episodes a month is with me and my Taoist and Chinese medicine girlfriend and business partner, Dr. Willow Brown, where we rap on the things that we are really well known for. So I highly recommend that. And because I'm in the sex space so much, when I listen to podcasts, I don't typically listen to my industry.
Yeah, totally.
I'm usually like so surrounded by it that I need a break. So I tend to listen to true crime. Those are some of my guilty pleasures. I also love Armchair Expert. I'm an armchairy and things like that.
Is there a particular guest that you've had on the podcast where you would really like more people to tune into the episode because it really hit with some information for you that kind of blew your mind?
Yes, one is Om Rupani. We did 2 episodes with him. I highly recommend the first one. The second one is good too, but I really loved the first one because it opened my eyes to understand both the cathartic, the healing, and the pleasure awakening potential that is found in kink and BDSM, which really opened up my eyes. I did not realize how much incredible work is being done in that industry. And I really love his take in particular because he has a Tantra background. So he uses the chakra system in relationship to exploring the subconscious, sort of these deeper parts of the psyche that is unconscious. And when we don't make that which is unconscious conscious, then we blame our life on fate, instead of really being able to be more conscious with what's operating underneath us that may be creating dysfunction, or that where we are actually denying a deeper part of our desire that could actually wake up our life and actually heal the things that are disruptive in our life. So I found that conversation so fascinating, really enlightening. And then, of course, I always find every conversation with Sherry Winston, the author of The Female Anatomy of Arousal, wonderful too. And we've got 2 episodes with her that are great. The first one is especially interesting for pregnancy and what's happening with the body through pregnancy and how we get pregnant and this whole phenomenon of change that happens in the body for women. Also, like the fascination between sperm, like there are 4 different kinds of sperm and they do different things. It's just wild. It's really, really fun. If you're a bit of a sex geek, I highly recommend those 4.
Thank you so much. That
Yeah.
sounds super interesting. And I think everyone should be a sex geek because it's their body. Like,
Yes,
you have to figure out how this thing works. And it's really funny how long it takes for people to become curious on how to make their body work.
truly.
It takes us too long to get to these conversations in life.
Well, and so if that's been you out there, audience, bodies hurt. And it's why sometimes we avoid being in one. Whether your body hurts because of the emotional pain or because of physical pain or because you feel disconnected to spirit, just remember that the way to more pleasure is not away from the body, it's into the body. And so I just really want to celebrate you for where you're at on the journey and want to encourage you to keep on moving towards this curiosity to want to know everything about your system and how to make it and how to get, more from it, more pleasure, more beauty, more love, more awe, more meaning. It's a playground and you came into one, so you might as well live in it fully.
You might as well learn how to use your body to have more fun. It's as easy as that. So where can people continue to learn from you and reach out to you and connect with you if they want to take classes and really dive deep into this?
Yeah, so my website is called moreloveworks.com. My other website is called sexreimagined.com. I've got online courses with both. More Love Works is where you're going to find more of my teachings, my classes, and how to work with me privately. I do coaching over Zoom and also in-person coaching and also in-person sexual healing. We've got a retreat coming up in October of 2025 in Crete, where we're taking a group of women and we are traveling to sacred goddess holy sites, and then we're doing practices for regeneration, for sexual awakening, for sexual healing. We're doing things like yin and yang yoga and qigong and all sorts of yummy stuff and eating great food.
That is fantastic. And I've always wanted to go to Crete, and I planned a trip there once. And so I got to really study and learn about all the incredible just goddess mythology that's on that island. And
Yay.
I mean, it's temple after temple
Yes.
that was built for the goddess. Crete has a really fascinating history.
Fascinating history.
Anybody's been curious about Greece, definitely just look up Crete. It's never ending, the stories about that island and how every country in the world has wanted that island.
Yes. It was the Mecca. Alexandria and Crete were like these civilizations that were at the top of their game in antiquity. They were these incredible places that people would travel to. It's where culture was at its highest. There's so much. Greece is, the country itself is fascinating. Definitely worth traveling
but
to.
I mean, everyone's wanted that island. So there's obviously magic there within the goddess. And all of your links are in the show notes for those that are listening to make it easier for you guys to connect with Leah. Leah, this was just a top favorite conversation for me today. Can you leave our listeners with maybe one last health, wellness, spiritual, or sex tip that they can consider adding into their life?
Yes, one of the things I would really encourage you to do is catch yourself when you're trying to keep your tears back. When you're trying to swallow your tears and push them down and I'll cry later, giving yourself permission to be an emotional being. Allowing yourself, because what happens when we suppress our emotions and we micromanage them, we end up storing them into the chakras. And what I think is really interesting is when you look at diseases that we often die from or that we suffer from, they end up always being in chakras. And I believe part of that is because depending on the issue that arises that's causing our emotions, if there's a theme, and when there always is a story behind it, we will stuff them in the appropriate chakras that are holding that emotional theme. And when we don't resolve those, they crystallize and they become disease. And so I really want to encourage you to do the work to end up finishing processing the emotions that you have stuffed, because, when you're going through a crisis, you can only manage so much. You got to just get through it. And that's why we're all in therapy, right? We're all just trying to figure out our past to go, I don't want this to keep screwing me up. So be willing to put your hands on your body. Let yourself feel the tears. Let yourself finish metabolizing the past so that you can free yourself up for the most magnificent future that you are magnetizing to yourself right now. All the love, all the miracles, all the success is waiting for a place to happen, and that place is you. And so when you can, in the present moment, when you're dealing with something that's got you a little shook up, do your best to feel it in the moment so you have less cleanup to do in the future.
Thank you for that tip. You're very intuitive, because I teared up a few times during our conversation today. So I appreciate it. I'm going to let it go after we wrap today.
Right on. Thank you so much, Whitney. It was a pleasure spending time with you today.
Thank you too, Leah.